Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and took fire in it, and laid incense on it, and offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. And the fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord has said. Among those who are near me, I will be sanctified, and before all the people I will be glorified." And Aaron held his peace.
Moses called Shai and Elzaphan, the sons of Uziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Come here, bear your brothers away from the front of the sanctuary and out of the camp." So they came near and carried them in their cause out of the camp, as Moses had said. Then Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons, "Do not let the hair of your heads hang loose, and do not tear your clothes, lest you die and wrath come upon all the congregation, but let your brothers, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning that the Lord has kindly."
And do not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moses. And the Lord spoke to Aaron, saying, "Drink no wine or a strong drink, you at your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations.
You are distinguished between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean, and you are teach the people of Israel all the statutes that the Lord has spoken to them by Moses." Moses spoke to Aaron and to Elisa and Ithamar, his providing son, "Take the grain offering that is like the pot offering, and eat the unleavened beside the altar. Put its most holy.
You shall eat it in a holy place before, because it is your due and your son's due from the Lord's food offering, for so I am commanded. But the breast that is waved and the thigh that is contributed, you shall eat in a great place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, for they are given as your due and your son's due from the sacrifices of the peace offerings of the people of Israel. The thigh that is contributed and the breast that is waved shall bring with the food offerings the fat pieces to wave or a wave offering before the Lord, and it shall be yours and your sons with you as a due forever, as the Lord has commanded.
Now Moses diligently inquired about the goat of the sin offering, and behold, it was burned up. And he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, the surviving sons of Aaron, saying, "Why you have not eaten the sin offering in the place of the sanctuary, since it is a thing most holy, and has given to you that you may bear the iniquity of the congregation, to make atonement for them before the Lord. Behold, its blood was not brought into the inner part of the sanctuary. You certainly ought to have eaten it in the sanctuary as I commanded."
And
Aaron said to Moses, "Behold, today they have offered the sin offering, and their burnt offering before the Lord, and yet such things as this have happened to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would the Lord have approved?" And when Moses heard that, he approved.
As I told you, in Leviticus, all offerings shows the Jesus Christ, and at the same time, we must learn what is the worship and what is acceptable worship and biblical worship from the offering. Offering is like worshiping today. So we must learn how to worship God and what is the way of worship from the Bible in Leviticus. Today, chapter 10, verse 1 and verse 2, there's very tragedy, very terrible event. Aaron, he has two sons. Their name is Nadab and Abihu. You know, chapter 8, chapter 9, these two chapters shows us Aaron's sons, they become priests. So Nadab, Abihu, they became priests, and then they could offer the offering for the people of Israel. So if you see the verse 1, verse 2, Abihu, Nadab, they took censer and they put fire on it, and they offered the fire before the Lord. And then what happened? They offered the fire before the Lord, and the fire came out from the Lord and consumed to these two sons of Aaron. What does it mean? They died. They offered the fire before the Lord, but they died. The fire from God consumed these two sons of Aaron. We have a question: why they died? They offered to God. In other words, they worship God, but they died. God didn't accept their offering. Here's the answer. Verse 1 says, now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it, and laid incense on it, and offered what? Unauthorized fire. Unauthorized fire what? Before the Lord, which God had not commanded them. This is the answer. The reason why these two priests, Nadab, Abihu, died before the Lord is they offer unauthorized fire. Unauthorized fire means strange fire, different fire. Because the Bible says this fire, they offer this fire, but this fire is what God had not allowed. You know, they offer this fire, but this fire is not allowed fire from God. What does it mean? They didn't follow the way of God, but they just offer the fire from their own idea and from their own efforts. We must think of worshipping from this event. We must learn what is worship before God from this event. What is the worship? Worship must be God-centered. And worship must be followed according to what God commanded. My beloved Jubilee members, You remember I preached what is the worship about for 6 months before. I preached what is the worship, what is the purpose of worship, why we are singing the psalm, why we doing the Bible reading. You remember? About 6 months I preached it. Do you remember? Almost 6 months I preached it. What is the worship? Worship must be followed according to what the Bible says. And worship must be faithful to what the Bible says. Worship must be God-centered, not man-centered, and not man-interested. Not man-centered and not man-interested. You know, today many modern churches, they singing and they worship. There are so many worship songs, modern worship songs, and there are a lot of good system for worship. It seems very gorgeous and very attractive, and they also make a lot of performance for the worshiping. But we must consider, even though we have a lot of good system and program for the worship, if God does not accept our worship, it is nothing. It is meaningless. Although a lot of people attend the church, although they have a lot of good system, if God does not approve, accept, it is meaningless. It is nothing worthy. Good building, good system. You know, God, He needs good system to be glorified. God, He needs good amp and microphone to be glorified. No. God Himself is very significant and sufficient and very glorified by Himself, not from other things. God Himself, He is very glorified by Himself. He doesn't need anything to glorify Himself. So we must correct our misunderstanding. If we prepare good system and good things, maybe God, He be more glorified, and God, He like this system and this choir and this performance. No. We must think of why we are singing and why we are praying, why we are offering. And we must think of how to worship, how we must sing. Everything of worshiping must be followed according to what God wants, what God says, and what the Bible says. It is more important than my idea and my own effort and my passion. More important thing is that what the God says and what the Bible says. And worshiping must be faithful to what God says. Some people, they just make many systems for the worshiping because they have this idea. Oh, God does not allow, God does not mention, God does not command. We don't have to use drum. That's why, God does not say the drum, electric guitar, and the choir, God does not mention we don't have to do using His system. That's why we can do everything. This is very different concept. One side, the people says, Bible, because the Bible does not mention electric guitar and drum. That's why we can use everything for the worship. This is one side. But another side is that because Bible teaches us we have to do something from the Bible. We must do. What do you want? You want to try to do what the Bible does not mention, or because what the Bible says we must follow and we must try to do these things. Yes, Bible does not mention you do not have to use drum, electric guitar, and the choir, and the screen, and some video clip, and you want to try these things, or you must try to do what the Bible says first. Every worship order of church, it is from the Bible. For example, we read the Bible. For congregation, we read the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. The Bible we read. Why? Ezra, Nehemiah. If we read Ezra, Nehemiah, the people they stand up and they read the Bible together. The whole congregation of Israel, they read the Bible together, and the people they listen to the Word of God through the reading Bible. And while we are singing the psalm, I preached it already. The Bible says we must sing the psalm and praise. Psalm is the Word of God. Word of God. So many songwriter, the Christian songwriter, they do not use the Bible, but they make the song from their inspiration, from their idea. Maybe today the Christian they will criticize me. We must think of that. The singing for worshiping is not for our feeling, not to satisfy our feeling. We must worship who God is. We must exalt who God is, not to satisfy my emotion. Worshiping is about singing who God is and what God has done. But psalm is Word of God and very inspired by the God. Why? Psalm is the Word of God. But people, they do not try to sing the psalm. But psalm is best biblical worship song. Why they do not try what the Bible says first? All things about worship must be set up from what God says. Worshipping is not about nice, gorgeous, fascinating things. If God does not accept our nice, gorgeous thing, it is meaningless. But instead, we must make every effort to be faithful to what the Bible says. Nadab, Abihu, Aaron's sons, they died. And there are the other sons of Aaron. Aaron, he has sons, Adam and Abihu, but he also had the other sons. Their name is Eleazar and Ithamar. Verse 12. Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his surviving sons. So there are two sons of Aaron. And this is another story. But Eleazar, Ithamar, they heard God spoke to them. And actually, after they offer the sin offering, these two sons, they must eat left foods after offered. But the result is that these two sons, they have to eat the left foods after offering. But if you see the Bible, verse 16. Now Moses diligently inquired about the goats of the sin offering, and behold, it was gone up. And he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar. Actually, they have to eat left the food, but they burn everything. And then Moses was angry with them. Moses was angry. Why? Nadab and Abihu, they didn't follow what God says, then they died. Then now, Nadab and Eleazar, Ithamar, they also didn't follow. But they died? No, they didn't die. And Aaron says, verse 19, Aaron explained why these two sons, they didn't follow. The reason is that, I can translate like this. These two sons, they are so considerate and they are so afraid of God. Nadab, Abihu, they just offer the fire from their idea and without awareness of God. But now these two sons, they so much consider God's holiness. That's why they just burn up everything. Very different attitude. Nadab, Abihu, they didn't think of who God is. And these two sons, they so much consider and think of who God is. Actually verse 2, verse 3, Moses, he spoke to Aaron. After these two sons died, Moses said, "This is what the Lord has said, among those who are near me, I will be sanctified, and before all the people I will be glorified." But God says He show His holy sanctified, His holiness, and His glorified in His glory. He show His holiness and glory to those who are near Him. And then these two sons, Eleazar, Ithamar, they so much think of this holiness of God and glory of God, and they have a fear of God. Actually, this Eleazar, Ithamar, they did mistake. They didn't follow what the Bible says, but they didn't die. And Aaron explained, because they so much consider and afraid of God's holiness, they didn't do. And then verse 20 says, Moses heard that and he approved. This approved means yatab. Yatab in Hebrew term yatab. Yatab means beautiful, successful, and make it better or satisfied. What does it mean? Elijah, Itamar, they have a fear of God. And their motive was right before God. And even though they didn't follow what the Bible says, what the God command, God saw their bottom of their heart. God, He knew what they are thinking. And then the Bible said it is approved. Approved means successful and satisfied. God was satisfied his heart. And it was successful offering. What is successful offering? What is the successful worship? Fear of God. Fear of God. And why motive before God? So we learn what is the worship from today's chapter 10. We must follow the way of God from the gospel. When we worship God, we must be faithful to what the Bible says, what God wants. It is more important than our passion and our idea. Worship must be God-centered. And we must learn biblical worship from the Bible, not from the people. We must learn what is worship from the Bible first. And when we worship God, we must have right motive. Right motive, right heart. Right heart means thinking of who God is, holy God. Who can measure God's weight and God's glory? He is greater than all things. This greatest God, He really was satisfied when we had right motive and fear of Him before His presence. Right motive, right worship. We want to learn this worship. This is our prayer. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your guidance and your instruction about worshiping. Gorgeous, the system, and nice, the system for worship is not primary. It is secondary. But the way of God's for worshiping from the Bible is superior to our passion and our idea. Lord, we want to worship you from your way and from your instruction, not from our idea. We want to see a successful worship, acceptable worship from your way. God, you want acceptable worship, broken spirit, broken heart, and wide mind and wide motive, and who has awareness of your holiness. Lord, this is our desire and our prayer. We want better, acceptable, beautiful worship before you from your guidance. You just give us more knowledge to worship you, to glorify you, to exalt you. You are important than our things and our efforts. But we want to make our every effort to more biblical, you-centered worship in our church and in our life. In Jesus' name I pray.